Hello and welcome to another edition of the Writer's Room. I am your host, J.Ishiro Finney,
you're hosting now.
author and alien in a human suit. Yeah, I guess I've elevated myself. I'm sorry, you're the host of this show. I'm the host of the other show.
Yes, you're the host of the other show. This is my show, God damn it.
Yeah, it kind of is actually. You run the roost here.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I am your host, the night editor, Kat Rocha, and Ishi has already introduced himself. Our alien in a human suit is trying to
Buddy
steal
Lord
the show.
rose from the dead.
Yes, and Buddy Lord has risen. He has risen.
We're very happy to have you back.
Yes.
I'm glad to be back. I'm not a zombie, I promise. No brains for me.
Too easy.
I knew. I was waiting. No, okay.
And William.
And William?
William Hastings, dark fantasy author and self-proclaimed voice of a generation. How are all of you?
I like that introduction. That is epic.
Trying it out.
So before we get to this evening's topics, Buddy Lord had some interesting thoughts about zombies since, he is nearly one now.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, I was just wondering, like, if zombies are, like, we find out they're actually attracted to something like gray matter or blood or whatever, right? Do then, like, the assholes of the community begin targeting people? Like, liberals leave bloody meat bombs and brain matter outside of Trump's house or something?
That's an interesting point. Now, don't they go for live flesh, though?
Okay, so I don't know. Maybe like you could even get like, I hate to go this far, this dark, but like fetal embryo, that kind of thing. You could even.
We're starting off strong tonight.
You can even get it a horrible way. Think about it. Like they got those like T-shirt shooters, right? Just like shoot like baby bombs. Boom!
Oh, this got so dark so quickly.
A baby Zuka, huh?
I know, guys.
Is something like this ever going to show up in Sins of the Fae or Sway?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. There's some dark stuff in there.
Your artist is like, I'm not drawing that.
But is it a fetus cannon dark?
Fetus launcher.
It's like you've already labeled yourself now. If there's no fetus cannon, there's nothing.
Well, you've set a pretty high bar now. I mean,
brand now. You're stuck with it.
I know, right?
Well, if zombies are attracted to brains, I think a large portion of the population might be okay.
Oh, yeah. Ocasio-Cortez can walk around no problem. She can just get in the middle of the fire.
Exactly. She'll be running the show, won't she? No fear.
It was funny, she was like, I'm so angry that the stimulus that's being paid for by taxes is not going to the people who don't pay any taxes, i.e., the non-citizens. And I'm like,
well, unless something has changed, last I heard they again shit-canned it, so we'll see.
Owen says literal baby boomers.
Wow.
I like that, Owen.
Anyway, tonight's topic was suggested to us by none other than Officer Kronsky.
Yes, and since we're already dark, why don't we continue down this rabbit hole? Officer Kronsky wanted to know, how do you... When you write a scene that is dark, I mean really dark, like Artax dying in the swamps of sadness dark, how do you move forward from that? How do you continue on and not diminish that tone?
Well, actually, no, it isn't a dark subject because it's about actually leaving the dark moment.
True.
And essentially what it is at some point your character is going to hit their lowest point. Someone dies, they have a horrible realization, there's loss, there's grief.
They had a baby launched onto their porch.
Yeah, exactly.
We've all been there, right,
your character's going to hit that low point. How do you then regain the narrative, bring the pace back up, get back into the action without it feeling jarring? That is the question. And I'm sure we have our own way of dealing with that.
I mean, I think you do it realistically. everything that you do in writing is predicated on behavior. And so if you look at like the behavior of people and the way that we kind of assimilate when we go through something like that, if you've hit your worst, right? Like if you've just been crushed and you don't know of anything, you know, what can you do? I mean, what is it that the only thing that you can do is move forward in whatever way. You know, you sometimes you don't even know, right? Like if a loved one dies or something, right? If you're really close to your dog and your dog passes away or whatever, it's like the only thing that you can do is you move forward, but you move forward half-heartedly because you don't really know what to do. And you just have to make people aware of that. I think you have to make people aware of the way the character is feeling at that moment. Yes, you crush them, right? But they're still them, right? They're still who they are. So you fall back. It's sort of like SEAL training, you know, they say that like SEALs don't go up, they fall back to their training. And and what I mean by that is like in your story, you've already created this character, right? So you fall back to the character.
Well, I think in SEAL training, what they mean by that is that in times of strife or incredible pressure, rather than needing to think consciously when things are getting so bad and you're rattled, you have what
you fall to TTP.
procedure.
Yeah, TDP, like tactics, techniques, and procedures,
you
and
go
all
right
that other
back
stuff.
to that. You know exactly what you're supposed to be doing at that moment, at that time. You don't have to think
Well, I mean,
about
that's why they crush them so hard in buds and everything else, is because what they're actually doing is they're destroying their body to get to the absolute sharpest point of their mind they can. Like, let's take everything away from you that you can. Can you still prioritize we over me? Can you still compartmentalize and break this down so that you don't take everything on at once? Because if you do take everything on at once, if your character does, they're just going to be crushed. So they have to think, what's the next thing? You know, it's like in lasting behavioral change, there's a force of psycho activity called ladders, step ladders. And what it means is if you are trying to enact a behavioral change or you're trying to go on from something, you take the smallest step forward. And that's it.
Baby steps?
You sure? Baby boomers, baby steps, mutated baby fetuses that you just release and like these huge armies, and then the zombies follow them around. That'd be kind
Like
of funny.
the zombie fetuses from Arsenic Lullabies.
We're not going there. Gotta stay on topic. I'm for once. I'm going to be reeling you in instead of you reeling us in because I know where this will go.
Oh, I'm having fun. we've
Well, I
had
mean,
a lot-
it's an interesting thing to think about, But okay, yeah, if we go there, we're going to go down a rabbit hole. So.
Oh, William, what are your thoughts?
Well, Kat can kind of attest to this, but I start my stories at that point, at the character's lowest possible point,
Mhm.
and then I build everything back up from there. I tell the story from that moment on, and
Okay.
I like that because when people are at their worst, you get to see kind of who they really are or who they really want to be.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like scarcity and fear, those kind of emotions reveal character.
Yeah, and even if you have, for example, I have a character, Nia. We've talked about her before. She's the lead sort of female protagonist of the Crimson Spark, and she is in the beginning of the story kind of an asshole. But
Putting it mildly.
yeah, putting it mildly. But in the very, very first scene, the protagonist, Leo, is at his absolute lowest point, and she does something very kind. So it sort of sets the tone that people are like, okay, so she is capable of being a good person. So let's see how we get back to that. And just like it's Leo's journey of becoming a stronger person, her journey of becoming a nicer person.
You know what I think that is a real big thing about it is not to make it immediate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you got to expand on that.
Okay, what I'm saying is like it's like in bad movies, right? Where it's like, oh, my dog died or this person died, it's horrible, and then they just turn right around and they're awesome. They're like, I'm gonna do this for her, and that's just it. And then they're just all of a sudden great. There's no trauma. There's nothing. I think that's completely unbelievable.
Can
You
you
know?
tell us about a time where you have done that in your own writing and how you approached it, so that you don't get tonal bends, basically?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have this character, Adira. Adira is the good girl, and Adira is always taking care of her sister. And there's at one point where they're both captured, and she is still taking care of her sister. She's like made inroads. She's talked to people. She's created this entire network between the soldiers and the prisoners of like clothes and food and stuff to try and get her sister the food they're used to, and more clothes and a little bit more benefits and all these other things. That she keeps the girls, calmed down. She's like, all right, look, let's not cause trouble, and then it'll be better for us. And she does all these things for her sister. And then her sister is just her sister. Kaylee's just like a beast. She's just an animal. Somebody looks at her the wrong way. She makes that person. She literally has that person kind of goads them to come back into her room, and then she nearly kills them, and they walk out of the room, bleeding and everything. And when they go to her sister and they want to punish her, because she's a shapeshifter, and in my book, the way the shapeshifting works is like their bones break, their organs like squish and twist and do all these kind of horrible things. Blood splays from their nose, their eyes. It's painful, and they just learn to live with it. And so beating them is nothing. That's not going to do anything. It's just not going to register. And so they get tired of trying to punish Kaylee, so they punish Adira, and they put her in this machine that's supposed to kill somebody. It literally induces enough pain to kill them because of what it does. It kind of absorbs their magical energy and turns it into electricity. And because of that, but because she's half highborn, which is a type of like godlike fae, she replenishes her magical energy every dawn. So they literally kill her every day and let her sister listen to it to punish her. And after like a month of this, her hair that she used to love is gone. This hard like metal surfaces or these electrodes are attached to her arms and legs and head, and it's just burnt into her. Her body is emaciated. She's been living in her own filth for a long time. Everything that she used to hold dear is gone. And then she's rescued. And in that moment, these people who have done this to her, like, she wants nothing more than to kill them. But in that last instant before she does, because I thought that would be cliche, she reaches in, she says, "You've taken everything from me except me, and you can't have that." So she doesn't kill them, and she just walks away. She like kind of crumples into the arms of CJ, who's one of the characters there, and then CJ kills them. He basically says, "She may forgive you, but I don't."
Well, my thought and my approach to the character's lowest point be, if that be the in the first act or in the third, it really, in every case, it's a test of who they are. It's that moment when the chips are down, when the mask comes off, and you see them for who they are, and they see themselves for who they are. And the next question is, what happens next? Do they run and hide? Do they put that mask back on, try to compensate, and just go back to the way things were and pretend? Or do they move forward? And how do they move forward? How do they go past that? An interesting example of a lowest point at the beginning would be The Crow, especially the film, in which the beginning is this man losing everything. And the rest of the film is essentially his journey in getting revenge and finding his peace so his soul can rest. Whereas I would say another low point, just to flip that around, look at the third act of Goodfellas, when Henry has essentially become everything he despises. He's a cokehead. He's completely lost all attachment to reality, and he's so much of a fuck up, he gets busted. How does he respond? How does he recover from that moment? And so in both cases, that's kind of a character study that tells us who they are. For Case File Arkham, especially the second book, there's that moment where the detective, in the second case, Hank Flynn, the detective, it's a very personal case. He's essentially investigating the murder of a very close friend. And when it all comes down and he finally realizes he's been had, he's been used, nothing is what it seems to be, and his turning point is, one, he deals with that emotion, And then he has no more fucks to give. That's it. He runs cold. It's done. You know what? I don't care anymore. And in that case, it was one hell of a fun scene to write. I don't want to give away what happens if you haven't read the second case file Arkham, but that can well, there's lots of different ways that I have no more fucks to give. I don't care what happens next. Reaction can bring. I mean, would you say that Dirty Harry in the first film, and I don't care what anyone says, Dirty Harry, the first film, is an incredibly good film. The other ones kind of gave it a bad reputation as just being a shootout kind of, badass cop with a gun. But that first film, when he hits that I don't care anymore point, I don't care what the consequences are. I'm going to do what I think's right, and damn the consequences if I go to prison. That's one way you can react. That's another way that is who Harry really is. Eric Draven, who is he once in The Crow? Once everything he has is lost. He's broken. He's pure rage. He can't let the pain go. He cannot move on. He's haunted by it. So there's different ways to take it.
Well, actually, first off, does anybody have any other comments for this particular subject?
Wait, one more. Or we see a complete change of character. The inner strength that was there but never realized finally comes to the surface. Sarah Connor at the end of Terminator. Finally, she stops running. She's going to fight back no matter what. And the whole time, Reese is kind of very aware that she has that strength. She's just not aware of it. And at that last point, she finds it. Why?
Okay, she had to?
Well, no, because plenty of people would roll over and die in that situation.
You have thoughts.
I mean, I don't know if plenty of people would roll over and die. I think that then most people, if you corner them, are going to come out swinging. I think that is the kind of thing. Again, it's the same thing as like she got SEAL training in a night, or in a couple of days or whatever. It's basically like she didn't sleep. She was completely exhausted. She had nowhere to go. Can you think? Can you compartmentalize? Can you put things together? Can you do this now?
Buddy?
Where do I live?
What state?
South Carolina.
You live in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I believe that the regular South Carolinian would come out swinging when the chips are down. I live in California. No. I think a lot of people would bend over and just take the Terminator's cold metal claw to their face.
Big shiny cock.
And waiting for someone to save them.
I did read about it. This is a philosophy book I read recently, or psychology, or social psychology, where they were talking about that in the South there is a respective culture of honor. It's the kind of place where you go to, like they went to all these bars like all over the United States. It was kind of funny, and they would insult people's mothers, and they found that if you insulted people's mothers in the South, more than 50% of the time, they wanted to fight you.
Well,
you do that in California,
mass shootings. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You do that in California, though, and they're just like, oh, well, I suppose you may have a point.
No, you do that in California, they're like, which mother? No, I'm kidding.
Well,
that's not a joke.
You see a lot of these mass shootings, especially blue state mass shootings. People run. People dive. People flip the fuck out.
Jesus
now,
Christ. Does anybody with me
country...
wish that David Hogg would shut up about his shooting?
Yeah, actually, I kind of would. He's a fake. But
yeah.
Then you look at that country music concert that was shot up in Vegas. Did anyone actually watch the ground footage on that? I watched all of it, all the stuff that was streamed before it got pulled. And let me tell you something. There were people in that audience diving, taking action, flipping off where they thought the gunfire was coming from. There were those who were trying to figure out a way to get up there and kill the guy. That audience was ready to fight.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference. That, and I was shocked how many of those people in that audience knew what to do when they heard gunfire.
that, and how many of them helped those who
How many
were-
men dived on their wives?
Yeah, who dived on their wives or helped the old, the young, the infirm. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Where you really don't see that in a lot of these situations.
So, Kronsky says, I agree. Going back a couple of comments, I think he is referring specifically to Nia, William. He says, I agree, but I like for my audience to earn any reasons to like the asshole characters. I think that is a great point. So I pose to the panel here, how do you make your assholes likable?
Well, assholes are infinitely likable long as you don't have to live with them. They're great to watch. I mean, assholes are some of the best characters ever because you aren't really living with them. You're not dealing with them on a day-to-day basis. You get to watch the show.
And I do mean, by likable, I do mean somebody the audience can like watching, not necessarily like.
Make them charming. Make them charming. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but I don't know. Like, there was a character in, I forget the author's name, but I was reading it. I couldn't read the other two. It's a series now. Magicians. You ever seen that or heard it?
I don't think so.
It's basically like an adult Harry Potter. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. It's, you know, and
wait,
the
that was the adult Harry Potter was what isn't was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Bone that. What Cinema Snob reviewed that movie,
Yeah.
The Adult Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, well, it's not like that. But
It
it
has different connotations in fiction.
Yeah, right. It's kind of funny, but I don't know. Whatever, more sophisticated, mature, however you want to put it. But the main character is just such a dick. It is so insufferable and so selfish that it's very difficult for me as a reader. I mean, that's one of the things, like, I don't know, that's personally for me as a reader, it's difficult for me to get through an asshole character if there's too much of it, because I just don't believe it. I'm like, how did this person survive in that world?
Well, like I said earlier, I have a character that suffers from chronic assholeishness, and you're with her for about 45% of the book. So I needed to think of something to make the people not, close the book in disgust and run away. So I had her do something very, very kind and very, very selfless in the first scene, which is where she sacrifices her own very long thought out attempt at freedom for the sake of a little boy she doesn't even know. And from there, you see her being a jerk and stuff from that, but you always know that she has the potential to be selfless and to do great things. And we work back towards that throughout the story.
Well, I mean, I would say that that's almost like, I don't know, there's a new series on HBO called Barry. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Barry like the fruit or Barry like the name?
Barry like the name, Barry.
Barry like the Manilow.
And it's like this dude that's like he's an ex Marine sniper. He becomes an assassin. And then he's like in the middle of a job, he like finds this this improv troupe and decides to be one of them and change his life. And the question that you come to, because he's like improving and he's improving some of the times when he first killed people and stuff like that, and it's making him live through these situations and he's thinking about them differently. It's like cognitive replacement. And he's just like, I don't know, like, yeah, that's how it went. I'm not sure. And my point is that what you come to in like the end of the second season is Barry a good person in a bad world, or has he always been a bad person trying to do good things?
It's a good question to ask.
It's kind of like the question that the audience always asks themselves watching like The Sopranos.
Mm-hmm. And I think, however, I err on the side of light because I just like, I don't know, I'm like, I was a paladin when I played D&D at first, you know what I mean? I just like that idea of light magic and holiness or whatever. But I don't like it all the way, because I think all the way it's boring, right? All the way, like lawful good. Who wanted to be lawful good playing D&D? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, it doesn't really lend itself to the style of gameplay, for one.
No, you're always like, we cannot kill them. We must. Especially, I don't know. They had this one stupid book, the Book of Righteousness or something, and it's like you can't kill the enemies. You have to talk to them every time.
Well, yeah, the paladin always winds up sounding like a self-righteous prick. I mean, I think
We
God,
used to tie ours up.
well, like it's been forever since I read the Dragonlance books, but I think one of the characters like wound up becoming a paladin, and I think they got around it because they had already established that he was just a nice guy, so now he's just a nice guy with a sword.
Well, if we were to take the Jordan Peterson route about lovable assholes and why we like people who walk between the light and the dark so much, is because they have a choice. People who can do evil, who can do harm, can choose to do good. People who have always been good, well, that's kind of dull. And people who choose to follow the rules because they're afraid to do anything different are just cowards. That's not a moral choice at all. And the driving forces of story is moral choice. If we already know that the hero is going to do everything right and never break the rules, you're going to have to put him up against some really difficult questions to make that interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of a case study with Gantz, but nobody's seen that, so...
Well, for me, I just keep thinking of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Where
the three characters.
The three characters where, the man with no name who might as well be wearing white, he is an asshole. And at times he does things that appear to be amoral, but he's really a good guy underneath. Where then you have Angel Eyes.
He's evil through and through.
He's evil through and through, but he's lawful evil.
He's got a code.
He has his own moral code that he sticks to a T. And that is what makes him relatable. Because you can say, okay, he's got a code. He has his rules that he lives by. I now know where he stands.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Poor unfortunate bastard.
It's all kind of a sliding scale. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying that it's all kind of a sliding scale, and you can go either way. It sounds like Will's characters are more on the chaotic side, and that's fine. I think that's really cool. You know what I mean? I think that's interesting that we have that like what is it? Chicken Sith here saying, what about starting at the lowest point, then backtracking to show how we got there, which sounds like that's what Will did with his characters.
Yeah, metaphorically, not necessarily with like flashbacks and stuff, but yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean that would be like Memento.
I'm actually going to bring up Will. And don't worry, there's no spoilers here.
That's okay.
What I liked about your books is what about at least Crimson, because I haven't read the next one yet. Nobody is 100% pure. Everybody has their asshole moment. It's just some people are either start there and then work their way in whichever direction you are taking them, or they wind up going there at some point. And I liked that because for some of the characters, it does cause the reader to rethink what they think about those characters. And then from there, wherever you take them, it's up to the reader to decide what they think. And I liked that you did that, especially because you have such a large cast. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. Most writers can't pull off large casts, and you can. So I like that nobody is perfect in your books.
And another thing, Chicken Sith, I actually really enjoy starting the character at a lowest point and then building the narrative off that of them climbing out of it. Maybe at one point it's maybe something I relate to a degree, but also it's a really wonderful storytelling motif in that you start them at the desperate point, and as they move forward trying to regain a new normal, a new semblance of who they are, you're constantly getting echoes and reminders of who they once were. So you're getting to know both who they were and who they're becoming at the same time, which I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, going back to comic books, my favorite DC story of all time is Final Crisis, and Final Crisis is literally the lowest, darkest point of the DC universe. It was written to be that. The tagline was "The day that evil won," and it's all about the superheroes working their way out of the lowest point that they've ever been and how they do that. And I've always
there's been so many crises. Which one was
I
that?
think
The
that was
last
the
one.
rape one.
Oh,
No,
that
that
was
was
Identity Crisis.
Oh, that was Identity
See, this is
Crisis,
what I mean.
right.
Can you tell us which crisis that was? What was
Final
the
Crisis.
problem?
There's Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis, Identity Crisis, Final Crisis, and
Yeah,
unfortunately
what
now
was Final
Heroes in
Crisis
Crisis.
different than all the
I am
others?
already confused. What the?
Okay, well,
That's why I'm asking him to explain. Which one?
This
Final
is like
Crisis-
Final Fantasy 15. You know?
Final
Oh my
Crisis
God.
is sort of separate from the other ones in that it doesn't really alter the way the continuity works. It's just a single contained storyline where Darkseid wins.
Oh,
That's it.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
he wins. He wins at the end of issue 2, I believe. It is a 7-issue story.
dude.
Yeah,
Why haven't I read this?
it's a little confusing. It gets very metaphysical because
Oh,
Darkseid.
is this the one Morrison wrote?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
interesting because the one that, yeah, when that one, the crisis is in a sense, he's what's at risk is the reader's perception of the continuity.
yeah. It's all about stories. The concept of storytelling is the theme in that, and I thought,
Yeah, it's
it was
not
sort
about
of-
the characters. It's about you, the reader, experiencing it and what you want out of it.
yeah, that's why it's my favorite. I think.
Okay, that's interesting.
I
remember-
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I remember a Justice League that was kind of, I don't know, it was weird. It was like there was a queen or something or a witch of Atlantis that took on Aquaman and she turned him into water
Oh,
and then trapped him.
Obsidian Age.
Is that what it was? Yeah, she
Yeah,
trapped him in his own palace and then like she created these like horrible like super villain or villains or whatever that were like they weren't the antithesis. They were pretty much just stronger than the Justice League in every way.
Right.
The Justice League went and fought them and got destroyed.
Yeah, they
even
lose.
Superman destroyed. And of course, though, Batman had like a contingency plan. It
Break
was-
glass in case we all get killed.
Yeah. And but I mean, it was interesting because that's where it started from. Was the Justice League is dead.
It's a great story. Joe
And-
Kelly, I believe, wrote that, and Doug Monk did the art for any of you guys who want to read it. It's called The Obsidian Age.
So yeah, okay, but that was, I don't know, I loved that one.
The obvious age of Aquarius.
The age of- It was I don't know. They got there were interesting points. It was kind of like, I mean, Batman outsmarted the witch in the long game, which is kind of funny. He's like, I mean, he almost like was like Doctor Strange. We're in the end game now, you know. And this was years before that came out.
Yeah, and one of the things I always liked about that story is that it ends with Aquaman being forced to sink Atlantis in the past.
Yep. He had to destroy because it was the hubris of his own community
Mhm.
that created her. So in order to end her, he had to destroy everything he loved.
And he's exiled from Atlantis, and he's like deposed because of that, and that sets up him for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Chicken Sith says the problem these days is so many characters are irredeemable for edginess and act like they've earned the right to be jerks. What are your guys' opinions of that?
I absolutely agree with that.
Yes.
I think that was one of the things I was really, really, really trying to avoid with Nea, not just because she's a jerk, but because she's also a girl and has short hair. And there's sort of this thing with girl characters with short hair being jerks and not ever getting called out for it these days. That wasn't really a thing in 2009 when I started writing her, but it became something, and I needed to figure out a way to make her relatable immediately.
I mean, I do think that there's a lot of characters that are like that. They're like, I don't know, people have read a dime store abridged version of Psychology, and they come out and they say, oh, well, this character's daddy treated him badly, so he hates everyone. You know, he's just horrible now. And I don't like that when they I don't know, people just, they just kind of create, like I said, an irredeemable, horrible character. Because for one, I think when we can say irredeemable, but I mean, what do we really mean? Oh, that you mean that, you know, is in the comic book they're hurting the protagonist or they're doing something that you don't like. And I mean, those are great to, I don't know, they're like popcorn villains that you want to cheer against and everything. but most of the time that's not a great villain, you know, or even a great, or if it's a protagonist, it's not a great character. You just kind of like, why are they doing this?
Well, usually, and this is probably where Hollywood gets it wrong, is that, well, interestingly enough, during this lovely day of the Red Death, making us all stay indoors, we're beginning to see celebrities, when they don't have the spotlight, how they're behaving and how disconnected from reality Hollywood is.
Oh
And
yeah.
so when they're writing their characters in these scripts, the worst thing in the world to them. What did they make Lex Luthor? They wanted to make him
made him
a
Mark
review
Zuckerberg.
blogger. That was the worst thing in the world to them, a review blogger. You know,
Oh,
daddy issues. I'm doing it because of daddy issues. How often do we get that? Or I want money. And see, those are all so dull, and a lot of them are so far removed.
the toxic
from-
masculinity.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing it toxic mess. Really, what makes a good villain is when their actions are something that you don't have to sympathize with the villain. You don't even have to necessarily like the villain, but a good villain should be doing something that you can relate to why they're doing it, at least. It makes sense to you why they're doing these things.
Hmm.
And so often, daddy issues or mommy issues is no reason
No, it's just
to
not
want to
enough.
destroy an entire city.
Yeah,
You know?
it's you know, it's like, oh, you know, my feelings were hurt. The world must die. What?
Tell me
World
how.
War III for money makes no sense.
Tell me how, you know, much better or worse daddy issues are to Lex Luthor's original motivation, which was he ruined my hair.
Well, that kind of shows you what the golden age was like, huh?
Well, you know, I think Lex's character examination in Smallville was much more effective in terms of daddy issues, because in a lot of different ways, Smallville was the story about three different fathers. It was about Jonathan Kent, Lionel Luthor, and Jor-El, and why all three of those were different and the way they conflicted with each other and that sort of thing. And I thought that worked really well with Lex's character in that. But for the new one, they didn't have Lionel Luthor wasn't even a character. So
No, I agree.
No, I thought that was one of the best Lex Luthors ever. Honestly, that one, and I liked the one in was it Red Sun? I think it was.
oh, he's the hero in Red Sun. That's one of my favorite.
Where he is basically, I've always thought that's the best Lex Luthor idea, is that what he wants is humanity to be the prime species.
Right.
Basically, he wants them to be the prima species, and he doesn't like that Superman exists, because he's like, with you here, we cannot achieve what we're meant to evolutionally.
You're holding us
So
back.
I
And that, you know,
so I
is-
want
Yeah,
to kill you because of that.
Is that how you
Attention
take
cover
that?
for his
I mean,
jealousy.
me, I'd always taken that to mean more of the fact that the moment gods walk among men, men are no longer free. We're essentially children again in their care.
Yeah, and I
And-
mean that's like a huge thing for like Japanese animation, man versus God. They love that, and that same kind of concept that, like, you know, I don't want God, because the minute God is here, I'm just, like you said, like a pet. You know, I'm an
how
ant.
many JRPGs end with you having to kill God?
Oh, so many.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they love that. I mean, even like look at like what is it? Full Metal Alchemist, right? I mean, what do you have? You have the truth and God at the end. Those are the real things that, you know, was it the dwarf wants to kill? The truth and God. He can't face his truth, and he wants to kill God because of it.
I haven't seen that. Maybe I should watch that.
I've actually been thinking I should watch it after watching Super
Oh,
Icon.
you've
So I
got
went
to
to
watch
it.
it. You got to watch it, and you need to watch like the understanding. There was the lady that wrote it. Like, she read there was a couple philosophies, David Hume's and another one, and I mean, oh, so good. Like,
Cool.
it really be, you know, like the idea of truth and correlation and causation, and what, you know, man, what is truth and perception of truth to man, and all these kind of things. Really so good.
Yeah, I always really liked the sort of morality aspect of Full Metal Alchemist. I remember I didn't really get the series until Cross showed up, and then I was like, "Oh, okay, I see what we're doing here."
Well, I like that. I mean, it almost like when that's kind of the same thing I do in my story. Like you begin domestic, you begin, it begins in like the mother's bedroom in her kitchen, and you're like, what the hell is this? It's well written, but what is going on here? And then it goes from there. You know what I mean? It begins domestic. She's just trying to take care of her kids, trying to take care of the life that she's built, and then you begin to learn that she's embroiled in something bigger that they all are. It's been happening for centuries, and you're like, oh damn, what's going on? And same thing is like, Full Metal Alchemist is, it begins like they're trying to solve their problem, not the world's problem, their problem, And at that very moment, their problem is just like in the first episode, it's just, we got to stop this guy because, he has a stone we want to, look at or whatever. And they're like, okay, so this is the research we want to do. This guy has it. That's it. That's all you know. And I like that. You start small. You start in kind of in a enclosed space, and then you broaden those horizons. Sort of like a video game, right? Like you learn the basic abilities first, and then they teach you more abilities as you go. They teach you how to use them.
Like a great example of a story. Speaking of video games, that starts out very, very mundane and becomes enormous is Earthbound, or Mother is what it's called in Japan. Is you start out as just a little kid in bed, and then you end up fighting cosmic horrors from beyond the veil of space. It's just
as one does.
Yeah, it's a day in the life.
Did you ever play Grandia?
No, I don't think so.
Grandia was great because it was a PS1 RPG, and you're this little kid. I don't think you're any more than 9, and you have your little friend who's 7. And for reasons, you as children are tasked with basically saving the universe from these. They're not Atlantean gods, but they're more like the Aztec or is it the Mayan gods, where it's the jaguars that come out of the moon?
Mayan and Aztec, they're both.
Yeah, this ancient race that's going to come out of the sky and kill everybody if you, a little child, don't save everybody.
That sounds like something I'd enjoy. It sounds kind of like Spark, actually. So
I highly recommend it if you can track.
Grandia is a great game. It is fantastic. There's like 3 of them, I think.
I remember Grandia 2 was on the Dreamcast.
The play is actually really good too. Like the gameplay is still good.
You meant the play like there was a stage adaptation.
Yeah, there's a play. I hope.
I mean, I would go see that, but
would be awesome. Owen Lister says that's what I'm trying to do with my story. Bring back the optimism.
Okay, my advice for bringing back optimism, and this may not be great advice because apparently my stories are all very dark, even though I don't think so. My point of view is that what we're lacking right now is that we've got plenty of stories that are dark and grim and dark and spooky, dark, everyone sucks. And that was one of the things that I really had a problem with the remake of Battlestar Galactica, for instance, was these people are the last of humanity. They're pushed to the brink of extinction. And in that situation, realistically, is the one time you would have such a unified enemy that they wouldn't be at each other's throats as much as they were. But the showrunners were so hell-bent on portraying humanity that sucked. And we're seeing that over and over again in so much of our media. Humanity is worthless and irredeemable. If you want optimism, have all that horrible stuff. Put the characters through living hell. Have horrible people. The thing that makes the difference is showing humanity rising above it. Mm-hmm. You show them the awful, and then you rise above it. That's what the new Star Trek gets so completely wrong. The people are amoral scumbags, and that's all they are ever. In the original Trek, we went from being a race that had destroyed the entire planet to a peaceful spacefaring species that was trying to bring civilization and unity to the rest of the galaxy and to explore and to move forward. So that's my advice to you: is you want to bring optimism back. One, have an ingrained moral code and morality that you operate by and don't break from it. Don't go into any of this postmodernist mealy-mouthed making shit up. Put your characters through absolute hell and have them rise above it. And it's going to cost them a lot and it's going to hurt and they will lose things, but they rise above it because they need to.
Couldn't have said it better.
Well, I have an exercise for you all to probably take us to the end this evening. And it goes definitely along with everything that we have been talking about. Since there are so many characters in movies, comics, just basically pop culture in general, where they are assholes for being assholes' sake, and there's nothing about them that gives the audience a reason to care. Pick one of these characters, whether it's in comics and movies, whatever. Just pick one. Tell us how they are flawed and how you would fix them.
Ooh.
Well, that's a little, that's a bit much to spring on us in the
I
last.
think that's like a whole show.
I don't know. There's any number of them, but I think right now the problem with so much media is that we had great characters that were ideals to live up to and to admire,
And you know,
and they were destroyed.
So, you know, is there one of those characters that has been utterly destroyed? I can definitely think of a couple right off the top of my head.
The entire DCU.
Oh.
DCU, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yep. Pick one. Pick a character.
How do you fix?
How would you fix them?
Easy. You just wipe out the current crap and say, you know what, none of this counts. Done.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. You have been tasked to fix. Let's pick a. Let's picture. What are we? Well, we've been talking about comic books a lot this evening. So pick a comic book character, and how would you? You have been given the ability to write this character. They say, "Well, you do whatever the hell you want. We don't care. You can even scrap their history. What are you going to do to fix them?"
You know, you should have. This is a show topic.
What?
That's what I'm saying.
It's 1,000 tons of shit to pack into 15 minutes.
Another
I got one.
Oh, he's got one. Okay.
Oh, you do.
Go, Will.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with an incredibly predictable answer. I'll go with Iceman.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Don't make him gay.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. I would keep him gay. You know, because I think that the problem is deeper than just they made him ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
I think that the problem is that they didn't realize what his personality was, and so they decided to make him gay, assuming that that's a personality. So I would write the story as if he doesn't really quite understand what his personality is, and that his flamboyant homosexuality is a front for not having a real personality and having.
It's like an emotional veneer.
Yeah.
It's armor for so people don't get to know him, and then he sort of gets to know himself.
Yeah, and you know he's still dealing with trauma and guilt from the whole apocalypse thing from the 90s, that sort of thing.
Hmm. I can deal with that. I give one. I don't know. It was one of the things that I hated the most, and I can't remember this. OMAC series, I think it was.
OMAC.
I've always liked Blue Beetle.
Oh yeah.
And I thought they just did him dirty, because I did think like Blue Beetle was always like right behind Batman as far as detective ability, as far as fighting ability.
We talking
as
about Ted Kord or Jamie Reyes?
Ted Kord.
Okay, awesome. I love Ted Kord.
Ted Kord, Blue Beetle was amazing because he was a dude. Mm-hmm. He got beat and bruised and knocked around and just crushed all the time, and he just kept coming at you, and I loved that. And that was one of the coolest things, is that his light, his play, his only like real, because none of his relationships ever worked out, nothing he ever had. All he had was Booster Gold. You know, and Booster Gold is this man, you know, displaced from time, and the only thing he really had was this guy who would just take anything. I mean, that whole relationship was like Booster Gold basically just making fun of Ted Kord, and Ted Kord thinking it was funny.
Yeah,
you know, and they were okay with it, and they were best friends. And I hated that they killed him. I just thought it was cheap. I knew what they were doing. I mean, I get it. They wanted a reason for for Wonder Woman to be like, "Grr, I'm going to break Maxwell Lord's head or break his neck and all this other kind of crap. I just thought it was lame. They could have done it another way. I would have kept Ted Kord, made him a more pivotal aspect of DC going forward, because I think he's an amazing character and criminally underrated.
I am going to respectfully disagree with you. I think I agree with you that he's a great character, but I will actually stick up for his death scene, because I think his death scene is really effective when you take into consideration the character's history. Ted Kord was created by Steve Ditko, who had a very interesting and complicated moral philosophy that would be difficult for me to get into in its entirety here. But another character that Steve Ditko inspired was Rorschach. And when you look at Rorschach and how Rorschach dies, it's almost identical to how the Blue Beetle dies. They're told, compromise or die, and they say, no, screw you, kill me. And I've always found that very heroic in its own way.
I guess. I just thought it was cheap because it's obvious what it was for.
It's a very Didio thing to do.
But in the case of Watchmen, it's completely different, because what it really is it's just like futility, because I can't stop this. There's no they're using him as basically a signal in the OMAC thing. I mean, he's basically just like, see, like, they're coming, they're going to do this thing, this is going to happen, and then then by having the camera turn in at the time, on Wonder Woman, because it ends up being its own self-fulfilling prophecy. By trying to stop what they thought was going to happen, they enact exactly what OMAC wanted to happen, which is to make the heroes look like killers. And I just thought, that's so, I don't know, it's just so cliche.
I'm not sure it was cliche for 2004.
I think it was still cliche.
I think that we were pre-Civil War. We were in a different sort of time period. Yeah, Dan DiDio didn't like Ted Kord. He was on his kill list.
I would say 2004 was when Watchmen knockoffs had not become trite and predictable and obvious from a mile away.
we were living in the pre-Scott Snyder, Tom King days.
Ugh.
Do not mention Tom King. Do not, please. That guy is like, I don't know, like irony, and
he's not a writer.
Literary devices are supposed to be used subtly, and he wields them like a baseball bat.
Why are you guys threatening his life?
I'm not threatening his life.
Stop threatening Tom King's life. If you don't like one of his stories, you're trying to kill him.
Is that what he said?
Yeah. Every time he does something stupid, it's like, oh, my death threats. People are saying things. I did a dumb thing in comics, and now
I must have thoroughly dismembered him with my adventure the novel.
Yeah, I know, right? You caused him physical pain. Do it again. I don't know. You know what the worst thing about Tom King is to me? Is that you can, I don't know, is the way that you can break down his stories, the way that he does everything. It's like, okay, Batman is the greatest detective, so what's the one thing he can't figure out? Himself. What, Mr. Miracle is the greatest escape artist ever, so what's the one thing he can't escape from? The atrocities of his own mind. What is, Flash is the fastest guy ever, so what is the one thing he can't run away from? His own guilt. Like, give me a fucking break.
Tom King is the worst writer ever. What's the one thing he can't escape from? His own self-denial. He sucks ass.
There you go.
How many lies he tells about himself.
Yeah.
I mean, holy fuck.
He is a compulsive liar. That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
He tries to look like this. There's an Irish folk writer or an Irish pop writer, contemporary classic writer. He wrote Let the Great World Spin. You guys ever heard of him? He runs a program that pulls what is this guy? Colin McCann.
No.
Colin McCann.
I've never heard of him. I don't read grown-up books.
He tries to make like I don't know. He's very like woke, and he tries. He puts a bunch of stories from different cultures and tells them in stories all over the world. I mean, it's a good program.
You can say he's culturally appropriate.
Yeah. Well, he can do it because he's of the woke, and they like him. But if you look at the way this guy dresses, like Tom King dresses just like him. Like he wants to be this Colin McCann guy.
Wow.
He can want in one hand and crap in the other and see what piles up first.
Yeah. I have definitely found that with a large majority, not all, but a large majority of these horrible writers that I'm reviewing on things like Adventures in Awful or other venues.
And I just thank you because you're doing God's work so that we don't have to.
A new one is coming. Don't worry. I know they're slow right now, but it is coming. But I've found that and I'm not even consciously doing it. I'm psychoanalyzing the reading. And I'm sure, buddy, you've done this too, where you start realizing how much of the story is actually the author. And so I will do that as I will start making assumptions.
Yeah, they're just
the
being a
person-
freaking, it's their therapy.
Yeah.
And it's bad therapy because the entire idea of therapy, there's 2 points. Well, there's actually a lot of points, but the main aspects of therapy are that you have to create the space for the person to come to you, and then they tell you what's going on, and then you give them feedback and exercises to change that, because obviously you're recreating a behavior. Well, guess what?
Like Tom King comes into your office and is like, I'm very uncomfortable with my wife's boyfriend being around the house all the time.
Exactly. And you say, lock the door, and he's like, I can't do that.
No, exactly. Especially that whole bit of, then I get up and, then I'm a wife and I'm a mother and I'm doing all this mundane stuff. And then I get up and I do it again the next day. And oh my God, it's like, Tom, I think you're sharing a little too much about your personal life and perhaps what your wife, if she exists, actually thinks about you. And then I saw interviews with him and I'm like, holy fuck, I was joking. Crap. Okay.
It makes you wonder where he got that idea of the coming fountain, the orgasm fountain in Superman. Was it Superman's palace of
a jacuzzi?
Yeah.
Yeah, the orgasm
Brainiac. And it's like, holy fuck, why the hell would you jump in that?
Or why would you have it? What's the point of that? Why would you even why? There's so many questions that I don't want an answer for.
Yeah, well, again, Lois, your husband has a bliss jacuzzi that gives you orgasms in his fortress of solitude that you never go to.
Right? And then she's like, wait a minute. It would have been funny, to be like, so this is why I never get laid, Yeah.
Well, no, she's got the 3 bots that look like her husband, which also has all sorts of Freudian connotations.
That was the weirdest fucking issue I have ever seen.
I mean, that was where Batman and Superman are having their bachelor's day or whatever, right? Batman's bachelor's day.
The evening without making out.
Oh.
Oh my God, that was just the dumbest thing where all the girls were partying, but Batman's like, oh, let's go to my house and have a tea.
Because that's what men do.
Yeah, why aren't they, this is Batman and Superman. They should at least be, if they're going to pretend to be normal people, why aren't they playing touch football out on the lawn of Wayne Manor or something like that?
I thought it would have been hilarious, they'd have been pulled a whole Incredibles thing where they just they go in just regular clothes and go kick somebody's ass, and they're like, that was fun, wasn't it?
So I got a fun little question for you guys. Speaking of Tom King, Kat, you might appreciate this. Who did Big Barda dirtier? Was it Cecil Castellucci or Tom King?
Wait, who did Big Barda?
Where Cecil Castellucci did the horrible feminist apocalypse shit.
The one with Granny Goodness on the casting couch.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Darkseid was here. It's my favorite joke in all of Adventures in Awful.
That was the most horrible fucking. Oh Jesus.
Well, I have not yet braved Tom King doing Barda because since she is near and dear to my heart, I rent this place. I don't want to put holes in the walls.
Okay, in the chat right now, I have just posted a link to Kat's Adventure in Awful, where she savages the ever-living hell out of Tom King's Batman.
Yes.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
that
you.
It's one of my favorites. I was.
And I'm quite proud of the Tom King sex bot video infomercial I put in there.
That is just so horrible. What is? I don't know. I don't even want to. It's what does your wife think of you?
What does your wife's boyfriend think of you?
Yes.
It's kind of in there. He kind of says in his interviews.
Yeah, don't talk to me or my wife's son ever again.
Well, don't worry. He has his 9-year-old daughter to talk porn to, so it's okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed
Oh my
writing these
God.
issues with my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter. You mean the scene where Lois and Catwoman have sex with Superman bots in a jacuzzi?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like, what the hell's wrong with you, Tom?
It's just too much. It's too much to go through.
Like, I do not want to know. Okay, we're about reaching top of the hour for this evening. So, any final thoughts, word sharings, zombies, Tom King for our audience?
Buy my books. We're all stuck in the house right now with the Red Death killing everyone. So I suggest you either go to 01publishing.com or amazon.com and buy one of my great graphic novels, or maybe all of them. They're available digitally or in print. Case File Arkham 1 and 2, which is Lovecraftian noir. Utopiates, which is a cyberpunk epic. Titanium Rain, audio drama of a futuristic fighter pilot story. And World War Kaiju, a satirical retelling of the Cold War, where instead of missiles, it's fought with monsters, giant kaiju monsters. Thank you.
Why did you do that in your DJ? Like
I
your
don't know, I thought it was
midnight
funny.
radio voice, you know?
It's the Morning Zoo show.
Well, it was blatant shilling, so I figured it had to fit.
Oh, okay, there we go. I'm down.
I'm doing sort of a temporary promotion for people who are self-isolating, quarantined, sheltering in place, or just really anxious about the whole situation that the world is in right now. DM me on Instagram or Twitter or anything, and I will send you a free copy of The Crimson Spark to entertain you through this monotony.
That's very good of you.
You're so
I
sweet.
try. I really try.
At least you're not sending them Tom King.
Yeah, no, that
that'd
would
make
be,
them want
that
to
would be-
commit
that would make
suicide.
them- that would make them more sick.
What about it?
I want to fight Tom King with a giant kaiju. Sure. I mean, if you want to see my stuff, you can go to bladeknight.com. There's a mailing list there. Sign up for it. It is, I want to put it in the chat real quick. It's pretty easy to find. There's some more pictures. There's another story called Sway that's going to come out sooner or later. And I would be more than happy if people would go there, sign up, and have a good time. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me at @TheBuddyLord on Twitter.
Awesome.
And
So-
Kat?
I need to see the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to peruse the chat real quick for any final comments. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening. Again, we had Buddy Lord, who has risen. We had William Hastings, and we had J.Ishiro Finney joining us this evening. So tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel, where we will discuss more writing tips here in the writer's room.
And please, because YouTube hates us and keeps hiding these videos, share the link on social media. Tell people, listen to the show.
Thank you all very much. You have a great